Good evening, and welcome to the 2020 Painesville City Council and Mayoral Candidate Forum. I'm Jacob Bertram, and I'll be the moderator for this evening. I'd like to thank the Painesville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Painesville Community Education for sponsoring tonight's forum, and tonight our producer is Matt Dickhausen. Before we introduce the candidates, we would like to let the audience know that they can submit their questions in the comments section either on YouTube or Facebook. We will be addressing those questions later tonight. First, I'd like to thank the candidates for attending at tonight's forum and address the rules for this evening. First, we will start with the City Council candidates, then move on to mayoral candidates. We begin with 1-minute introductions, then move on to 6 prepared questions, and the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer those questions. After that, we'll open up to our live viewers at home that might have some questions for you as well. After that, we'll end with closing statements. Just a reminder, this is a forum, not a debate. We ask that you address your responses to me, the moderator, and focus on addressing the question rather than debate with another candidate. When your 2 minutes are up, almost up, I will raise my hand and you'll see a yellow screen at the bottom of your screen. And when your time is up, you'll see a red screen at the bottom, and we ask that you finish up your statement as soon as possible. All right, let's get this thing started with introducing our 2020 City Council candidate. I'd like to welcome Jean Soini, Bill Fuchs,
Hi.
Megan Brick, Jerome Feigum, and Teresa Hacklander. Thank you all for joining us today. The first question for this evening will be going in the order I announced you guys, so we'll start with Jean. The first question is, what can the city do to spur growth in the Painesville community? Jean, your 2 minutes starts now.
I always have to be first. To spur growth, I would say having jobs and housing available. We have a lot of good businesses in the industrial park, and they're always looking for employees, and those employees need housing. And I would like to see some growth in retail, but small towns, that's just not happening anymore. So we just need to work on what we have and make it better. Encourage people to come.
Bill will ask the same question. What can the city do to spur growth in the Painesville community? Your 2 minutes start now.
Well, I would say the biggest factor in the job growth opportunities here in Painesville is the industrial area. It's unfortunate that right now we only have one spot left. It would seem like a logical thing to try and expand that industrial loop area or industrial area of some sort somewhere around Painesville so that we have some areas ready for companies to come in and set up. But we've been just blessed by the leadership of 20 to 30 years ago, over 30 years ago now, that set that area up. I think that's really what separates us from some of the other small towns around the area, is that there are jobs here if you want to work. And I think that's been a great plus for Painesville and the tax base in general. Those businesses all pay taxes, and it's a big part of why we're here and why we're still relevant as a city.
All right, thank you, Bill. Megan, we'll go to you.
I think to focus on the growth of Painesville, we need to focus on some of the issues that we are prohibiting that growth right now. Housing is a big one in Painesville in particular. Childcare is another one that's big all over Minnesota. And I think we need to focus on our great points, which we have a really great, strong school system, which is good in a state with open enrollment. And just market kind of what we do have and let people know that we're here and all the great things about Painesville.
All right, and we'll go to Jerome next, starting right now.
I guess I would have to kind of agree with Bill there that the industrial area is probably our strongest point. And I would agree. I think that we need to find a way to make some more area relevant and zoned for an industrial growth if we can do that. being situated between Wilmer and St. Cloud, I think you can get a lot of commuters that will go both ways. Some will go into the city to find employment, and others will come from the city if they can find good employment. Going along with that, I'd also have to say that housing is an issue. That tends to be a lot of private that people will want to buy, or if we have development of some type of an organization or a developer that would like to come in and build some homes, that we can, actively market with them to help draw some more people into the town. The school, again, I work in a school. I think it's a great place, and I think we're extremely lucky for the people we do have here in town.
All right, thank you, Jerome. And Teresa, your question, if you still know what it is,
Yeah.
You can begin now.
Thank you. I guess I would have to go along with the majority of what they've already said. We do have some great businesses here for employment. Housing, of course, is short. It'd be great if we could somehow build some houses along with those apartments that are going up. But along with that, and our school is great. We had 4 kids that went to school here, and it's an awesome school. But to have some even activities, I don't know if that's the right word, but entertainment maybe for those families with kids. Sure, you have the parks and things, but we're also competing with some of the other towns around us. So if you can get something along that line to kind of compete with them, I think that'll help bring in more people as well.
All right, well, thank you. And being we started with Jean, we're going to go back to actually Teresa for this next question. The question is, what do you consider to be Painzill's strengths, and how would you best capitalize on them?
That's easy.
We have some great nature areas, our lakes and parks. That's a great asset to have, and the bike trails that we've put in, that's amazing. Our school, I think, is probably one of the best ones around. I think we have such great teachers there that I don't think we can hardly compare with some of the other ones. So those would be 2 of the big ones that, to really up those assets, along with a lot of our different industries as well that will bring people in. I mean, there's so many things about our town that's great, so it's hard to pick and choose just a few, but those are probably some of my top ones that I would go with.
All right, and Jerome, you're next. What do you consider to be Painzill's strengths, and how would you best capitalize on them?
I'd have to say just the personality of the city and the people that inhabit it. I feel perfectly safe walking around town at 10 o'clock, midnight. I don't have any worries about my safety or what's going on. A big part of that is the citizenry. They take their personal responsibilities to heart. I'd have to agree with Teresa also. We have a lot of great recreational opportunities here. And with the building of the field house at the school now, I think that's just going to explode exponentially, because that field house is going to be so versatile for us that'll really push the value of the school, as well as the things that we can bring to the community.
All right, thank you. Next, Megan, whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, I could talk for a really long time about that, about the safety and the jobs we have here and our schools, but I can't. So I think that our biggest strength is us, our people, and we have a great sense of community and a common cause in Painesville, and I think that's really good. And I would say that's probably our biggest strength.
All right. Bill, we'll go to you.
I think, given the fact that you have 5 people, 5, I think if I counted right, running for 2 seats on the city council is a testament to how much people in this community want to be involved. They want to be active and grow a better community. And I don't think that's the case everywhere. I think there are towns our size that struggle to get people who are interested in the public service. So I think the people certainly makes the town, and then I think the idea that we still feel like a small town, and I think sometimes people talk about growth and wanting to grow the city, but it's easy to lose that small town feel in that process. And so I love the fact that although we have been successful and we have jobs and we're a thriving community in many ways, we still feel like a small town. So I think that's a testament to the people who live here.
All right, and lastly, we can have Jean answer whenever you're ready.
Okay, I agree that it's the people that make up the community and the town. And I think one other asset that hasn't been mentioned that is very important for our community is our medical. We have a hospital here, we have clinics here, many doctors and specialists, and they take, we have an older population moving in now and living here, and we have all the help for them right here, and they don't have to travel so much. So I think that's a great asset to add to the list that was already given.
All right. We'll move on to our third question. And Jean, you'll be the first person to answer. What do you feel are some areas of improvement that the city of Painesville can work on to better the community?
Well, that's a difficult one. Areas of improvement. Well, I think we need to work on making our downtown more viable. We don't have a lot of empty buildings. That's not an issue, but a lot of buildings are being used as storage. And I think that we need to have a more active downtown environment and a safe environment for everybody. Although I do feel we are a pretty safe community. I could walk around to any time of day and not worry about it. I don't know exactly. I have to think about that one.
All right, Bill, on to you.
Can I hear the question again, sir?
Sure. What do you feel are some areas of improvement that the city of Painesville can work on to better the community?
Well, it's interesting because when you say city of Painesville, there's two schools of thought there. Are we talking about city government or are we talking about city citizens in general? I would say that as far as city government goes, I think there's areas of improvement as far as not taking away people's rights and personal responsibilities with overreaching government legislation or mandates. I think as far as citizens go, again, I think we have a pretty involved citizenry, and I think that will only continue as long as people feel like they can be a part of the process.
All right. Megan, you're next.
I think that the one issue that I see that kind of is overarching and kind of connects all the others is maybe a communication issue from time to time. In the past, it seems as though people and citizens of the city have been unaware of things, whether they're events or just the reasoning behind certain decisions that have been made that haven't been clear. And I've seen a lot of disagreements or issues that rise from the misunderstanding. And I think that if we had a more effective way, a more outreach to Painesville, that we would clear a lot of issues before they even started. So that's one thing I would like to see as kind of an underlying thread to any other issue that we might have.
All right. Whenever you're ready, Jerome.
Can I hear the question again, Jacob?
Sure. What do you feel are some areas of improvement that the city of Painesville can work on to better the community?
Earlier, Jean addressed the downtown area. I'd have to say I kind of disagree a little bit with that. I don't think you're going to find too many small towns that have an active downtown anymore. I think that's, unfortunately, is just the way of life now. it's not that I want to see it abandoned or buildings run down. I just think maybe we need to try to find other utilizations for those buildings and that space. Maybe a tech firm of some type that can come in and join the two buildings together. And the city can help out as far as remodeling and getting them the infrastructure to come in and do that. The other thing I would have to say is pushing forward. I think, as I stated earlier, we're in a great position between the city of St. Cloud and all the surrounding areas there, as well as Wilmer. I think we need to get that out. There's plenty of social media out there. There's plenty of electronic media that can be used, and push our small town life. Talk about our safety, talk about our good schools, talk about the hospitals, talk about all those things to pull people in here, and let them see for themselves. It's
Right.
not a commitment until they decide to stay.
All right. Thank you. And we'll move on to Teresa.
Kind of with Jean, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but also the communication issue is something I can also see too, where I've working downtown, you can hear some different things that you kind of feel like you're in between, like, well, who's right? Because you hear two different things and different events. There have been times I'm like, shoot, I wish I would have known that was going on. I would have loved to have joined it. So yeah, I think communication, if there's a way that we can better get the word out about different events or just in general working together, that would be great. And I know, yeah, the downtown, sometimes you think maybe it needs to be beautified, but at the same time, like Jerome said, the downtown areas in towns anymore really aren't happening. And so you kind of have to think outside the box of where would it be better to maybe put some businesses up, etc.
All right, moving on to our fourth question. Teresa, you'll be the first to answer this. The city has roughly a $2 million annual budget. What percent do you think you could cut from the budget?
That's a tough question. Wow. Without really knowing what's going into that budget, it's really hard to say what I could cut. But sometimes having fresh eyes looking at a budget, you can find things that maybe somebody else didn't see. I did that in a job that I had where they were paying this high telephone bill for years, never paid any attention to it. The director quit and I became the intern. I looked at it and I'm like, you should be able to cut this in half at least. And it was, I think, even less than that. So sometimes you can find little places where you didn't even realize there are areas you can cut until you start really looking into things. So without a whole lot of detailed information, it's really hard for me to give a detailed answer.
All right. Jerome, you're next.
I guess I'd have to agree with Teresa on that. It's hard to give a $2 million budget. Seems like a lot, but nowadays it really isn't that much anymore. Given the times we're in, obviously cuts are going to have to be made, I would say. At the very least, no increases. But again, before I'd make a solid answer on that, I'd want to see the budget. I'd want to see how the breakdown works of what the expected assets are going to be. How much does the city expect to get in revenue? What are the mandatory expenditures, and what things can we hold off for a little bit and see how the economy does.
All right, Megan, whenever you're ready.
Well, the same as those two. I don't know that I could come up with an exact number, an exact percentage without seeing more and talking to people who know more than I do about the city's budget. I think it's going to be hard to come up with exact numbers for the next little while until we know exactly what the economic repercussions of COVID are going to be. So while I agree that we'll have to do tweaks and we'll have to make some changes. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to come with an exact number because we're in an ever-changing situation right now.
All right. And Bill, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you. You know, it's interesting. Along with the Constitution of the United States, which I carry with me every day, I also, in that Constitution, have the 2018 city budget paper that I cut out of the newspaper, I guess 2 years ago. And it's interesting, you know, I look at things like spending $133,000 on an airport, and I question, you know, how many people get to use that. But I guess the biggest number on the list here is the police department at $466,000 in 2018. And I question a lot of those expenses. I would say the very first thing that I would implement myself is that I would not take money that the government took away from my neighbors without their consent and donate it to nonprofit organizations. And I know that's not always a popular thing because there's some fabulous organizations that come to the city every year for money. But I will reach into my wallet and donate my money if I feel it's appropriate, but I would never reach into my neighbor's wallet, take their money away, and donate it to a nonprofit.
All right, and we'll move on to Jean whenever you're ready.
Well, I have been working on the budget with the city for quite a number of years. The last 2-3 years I've been on the Budget and Finance Committee. And I'll tell you right now that that budget is gone over and over every year with a fine-tooth comb looking for any ways to save money. And every year there's at least 5 to 10 people that look at that budget looking for ways to save money. And one of the things we've been adamant about is not cutting staff at this time. We went through a hard time when we were short of staff, and these people, I mean, we have so much work. The DMV is doing twice as much volume now that they've ever done, and way more than they did 10 years ago. So we really do look at the budget and try to keep the percentage down for everybody.
All right, and we'd just like to remind our viewers at home, we have 2 more questions, prepared questions left, and then we'll open up to discussion in the comment section. So start thinking about your questions and put them in either on Facebook or on YouTube, and then we'll be able to ask the candidates those questions. So moving on to our 5th question, Jean, we'll start with you. What do you think the role of the city is to address the downtown?
We've had a couple of companies come in and give us some ideas. And I guess the role of the city is to kind of follow through on some of those ideas and connect with the owners of the buildings downtown and see what they would like to see as far as improvements. I'm not saying we're going to have a bustling retail downtown. It's not happening. It's not going to happen again in small towns. We can have services, and that's perfectly fine. But I guess the city's role, I know the plan is in the future for new sidewalks and streetlights. Sidewalks are terrible. They slant to the outside. It's hard to walk when it's icy, and that's just one of the things I know the city is looking at. But as far as the other things, it's up to, I guess, to kind of follow through on some of those ideas that they've gotten from the consultants.
All right, moving on to Bill.
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Sure. What do you think the role of the city is to address the downtown?
I'm going to repeat that to you. The role of the city, and when you say city, I assume you mean city government. Obviously, we have to take care of the infrastructure. We have to have good roads. As Jean said, we have to have good sidewalks. That's just a given. But what we can't do is you can't make something happen that isn't going to happen. This is not 1955. We are not going to have all of our shopping taken care of in downtown Painesville. It just doesn't going to happen. I agree with Jerome, that times have changed and that has moved on. I think the best approach that the city government can do, the number one thing is flexibility in use. And unfortunately, we've seen that go just the opposite with some recent ordinances passed. But I think if you can find someone who's willing to buy a building, pay the property taxes, and maintain it, then we better be darn flexible as to what they want to do there.
Megan, whenever you're ready.
Okay. For me personally, I think that the issue with downtown, there's a few layers there. I think that we both need to work with the Chamber of Commerce and support what we do have already, because I think there are a lot of assumptions about downtown that it isn't doing as well as it is. And it actually is doing very well. There aren't empty buildings. It's more of a service industry than retail, but not a lot of small towns can say that they have as many businesses as we have that are actually up and running. So that's one thing I would like to really support, the businesses that are already there and encourage people to use them. And also to create an environment where other people want to move in and do new businesses as well, because as everyone said, times have changed. They started changing with the expansion of highways and definitely with high-speed internet, and how we do business is really different now. So we're going to need to think outside of the box and continue to create a thriving downtown.
All right, and Jerome, whenever you're ready.
Boy, the downtown can be a bright spot or it can be a dark spot for us. I do agree that our downtown does pretty good considering the times. I mean, we all pretty much agree that shopping is not going to come back. It's not going to be a viable asset in a downtown community like ours anymore. That's where I stress the idea of trying to convince, there's all types of small tech businesses out there and firms out there. For us the city to be ready to help those businesses come in would be a big deal. And that would take meeting with the building owners. How good is that building for anything like that? What changes need to be made? What infrastructure needs to be put in? Now we're not talking about redoing a building for a private citizen, but if we can help them with putting in some type of structure to help the electronic end of it, the internet part of it, I think just so the city has some type of plan out there that can be implemented quickly if that opportunity should arise.
All right, moving on to Teresa, whenever you're ready.
Definitely the sidewalks need some help there. I agree with Jean. They slant and it's not a safe thing to walk on in the winter. And we do have a lot of businesses down there, not retail per se, but there's a lot going on. I mean, the streets are pretty busy during the day if you go downtown. So we have a busy downtown. How to improve that? I guess I would go along with Jean and revisit some of the things that have already been looked at and presented, and just see, if they still are fitting for the time now, or if it's something that's gone by and we have to relook at the whole thing all over again. But yeah, that's where I would say we're at.
All right, moving on to our last question, prepared question, before we open up to our viewers at home answering those questions. Teresa, you'll be getting this question. And why should the city of Painesville residents vote for you?
Well, I'm a very small business owner. Just started that. I've worked in a number of different positions, so I kind of have an idea of where the working class is coming from. I like to think that I'm approachable from all different community people out there. All of our, my purpose for running is to hopefully give some new changes or thoughts to the city and just be a fresh set of eyes on different things. And I would do the job to the best of my ability. Something I take very serious.
All right, moving on to Jerome. Why should the city of Painesville residents vote for you?
Well, that'll be a personal choice for each citizen. Sometimes people think I'm always angry just because of the look on my face. I struggled with my whole life. Unfortunately, that's just genetics. It's the way I was built. Most people that know me know that once I start talking, I probably should shut up, but I don't. I like to be involved in things, and before being in law enforcement and a lot of other government throughout my life, a lot of people like to complain, but nobody likes to step up and do it. And I don't believe that. I think if you want to make change and want to do change, you need to put your foot in the fire and get involved. So that's the reason I'm running for the council. I'm not a local. I wasn't born and raised here, but we've chosen to raise our family here, my wife and I. And right now we have no plans on leaving. I'm retired, kind of, and my wife still works locally. So I just think I can maybe bring a different perspective into the council, and I'm hopefully that I can do that for the city and the people.
All right, moving on to Megan.
Okay. I don't think you look angry, Jerome. So I grew up on the range and in an area that had been devastated by mine closing and kind of went through the economic roller coaster there. And it's really impressed upon me the need to sustain our communities for future generations and not have a big boom of growth that we can't sustain and not lose who we are, but continue to make rural areas sustainable. And it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, especially now that I've settled here. My husband, well, he's from here, but I've lived here for 14 years and we have 3 children, 13, 7, and 5, who are in the school system and will be, until they graduate. And so I'm very, very committed to making sure that the area continues as it has been or better until they're grown. And if they want to stick around, then make sure that there are opportunities for them.
All right. And Bill, whenever you're ready.
Well, I was born and raised here, and I love this town. This is my community. I will say that my personality, for people who know me, this doesn't come as a big surprise, but my personality dictates that every decision that I would be asked to make as a city council person would be based on the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Obviously, there's a role for government in our lives. There is no one, I think, that would argue that. But I've also seen that role grow and grow and grow over my lifetime. And in many areas, I think it's grown beyond what it should be and impacts my personal ability to do things that I want with my property is a huge deal for me. So I think that's the biggest difference maybe between me and maybe some of the other candidates is protecting others' freedoms.
All right, and moving on to Jean.
Well, I too love this community. I've been here over 50 years. I've raised my children here, and actually my 3 children are all still working here or living in the very close area. And I guess the main reason that I would want or think people could vote for me is I have the experience, I have the history of what's gone on before. Does not mean I'm not open to change. I am very much in favor of changes, and I'm always open to new ideas and always looking for new ideas. And I feel people have always felt comfortable coming to me with their concerns, and I usually try to deal with them for them. So I just have nothing but love for this community, and I just want to be part of it and help, and I like to be part of it.
All right, well, thank you. And now is the time that we'll open up to our viewers at home. They had a couple questions they sent in, so we'll be able to take those as they come in. So Shane Schmidt is asking, with our budget needing to be cut by close to 16%, as I am on the fire department, I see the equipment and trucks that will need to be replaced within the next couple of years. What are our best solutions? And Jean, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm a little prejudiced there so with the fire department, but I know that I have seen the plans for future trucks, and they're extremely expensive. And so the plan is to keep putting some money away towards it. There also is hopefully going to be more grant money available, and we need to be checking into the grants that there is. And so the fire department is very, very well supported in this community. And if they need something, people step up and help. So.
All right, moving on to Bill.
Yeah, I would agree. It is well supported. I look at the budget and I look at some of the discretionary spending that goes on, and that would pay for a lot of fire equipment if it's needed. So I personally think there is room in the budget to support the fire department as needed. I think there are certain areas of discretionary spending with some nonprofits that could be adjusted. I also look at the law enforcement area, which occupies 25% of the budget, and it's there's a lot of money spent there. And I always tell people, do you even know how many law enforcement we have in Painesville? And most people can't even tell you that. And I kind of get a chuckle out of the fact that when we're understaffed, no one notices. But I'll tell you what, if the water and sewer department is understaffed, you'll notice. So I think it's about supporting the important and core duties of the city.
All right, and moving on to Megan.
Well, I think like any other part of the budget, we're going to need to probably, buckle down for the next few years until we realize what we're working with. But when it comes to things like the fire department that are something that's, the safety of our citizens, I would hope that we're going to give those things priority. And like Jean said, I think grants are a very good way to look into that, as well as fundraising, because they are very well supported in this community because they do a wonderful job. And I think everybody realizes that. So I think, just kind of look at wants versus needs and see what we can do to raise additional funds and go from there.
Okay, and Jerome, whenever you're ready.
Well, I think Minneapolis showed us that one of the primary focuses of government, whether it be city, county, or state, is safety and security of their citizens. So, cutting short on the fire department or an ambulance crew or a police department, there's always seems to be things you can cut, but at the same time, you have to consider the loss of doing that. If we know we're going to be replacing those trucks, I like what Jean said, that we're trying to put money away to forecast ahead for that. If the security of the citizens and the buildings are important to us, then maybe infrastructure needs to be pushed back a year or two. That's something you'd have to get into the budget again and decide what can we stretch out, what can't we stretch out. But I'm not one for shorting on public safety.
Okay, and Teresa, whenever you're ready.
The fire department and police department are very well, I think, liked in the area and supported. And like Megan said, the grants would be a great way to bring in some extra money, along with some fundraising. But especially if we need to cut corners, that's not the place to do it. And and we would just have to find it somewhere else. But hopefully with our budgeting that Jean said that we're putting money away for that the money will be there and that we can keep our trucks and vehicles all up to working standards.
All right, and we'll have our next question here from Amanda Sievertson. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town? And because of timing, we asked, we're going to be changed it to 1-minute answers. So Teresa, we'll start with you whenever you're ready.
Okay. It seems like we've tried different things in the past to get input from community. And one of the things that I have been pondering on, as much as people probably don't like to do it, but if it comes to door, or even have, say, the east side of town, little community meetings, and one on the west side, I don't know, something along that line where we can get people to meet together in a smaller group. Maybe they'd be more apt to talk about some needs or issues that are going on and be willing to give us their input.
All right, next, Jerome, whenever you're ready.
One of the first things that come to mind for me is what we're doing right now, using electronic media. We have a lot of elderly residents that probably aren't as adept at using that. I'll put myself in that category. Maybe a quarterly meeting where the city helps to put forward a barbecue at Gazebo Park, early in the spring or in the fall. And we invite citizens to bring their concerns and things to us, for us to be a face-to-face thing, if that's possible, sometime in a hopefully normal future without the COVID concerns. Between electronic and then just putting things out in our newspaper. I think our newspaper is well supported. You can only do so much. People have to want to be involved and want to make themselves heard. We can reach out as much as we can, but if they don't want to talk to us, there's not much we can do about it.
Okay, and Megan, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I think it goes back again to the issue of communication, and I think those are all really good answers. We just need to see, I think there's not going to be any one particular way that works. We can't do just electronic or just door-to-door or anything, but I think if we look at what works best for as many people as possible, we can kind of work with that. And I don't think, none of us can promise that we can do something about every citizen's concerns, but I think that all of us would be willing to listen and do what we can for the majority of the people here in Painesville and do our best. And I think that's what we're going to need to do, be as transparent as possible about decisions.
All right, and Bill, whenever you're ready.
Well, as a member of the City of Painesville Planning Commission, it's been kind of fascinating. We've had a lot of meetings with no one there except the members, and I think Jean can comment on being at the city council level. It's quite the same situation where I've even been there and been the only audience member. But the one thought that I did have is similar to this forum. I like the fact that Jeff Thompson was always willing, when I was there at least, even if I wasn't on the agenda, to always take public comment at city council meetings. But that's not a given, and I think it should be. There should always be an opportunity for any member of the community to speak at a city council meeting. There should always be a window of opportunity for that. And I think even a window of opportunity for a situation like this, where you have someone being able to read comments that are put in from a live stream.
Okay, and moving on to Jean.
Well, one of the things we do have in the city is the committees. So like Bill was saying, he's on Planning Commission. And we do have community people on all of the committees. And so if there's an interest, if they have an interest, they just need to let somebody know they want to be on a committee, and they get the list of the committees, and they're changed every year. The other thing is we could do something, yes, like this, where we have evening where all the council people are on and people could put in questions. I mean, it would be a very good way. And maybe just a town hall meeting like sometimes people do, where invite the community to come and we're all there and they can ask questions. So that was it.
Okay, and we'll see if we have another question. Amy Ostendorf asks, please ask mayor and council candidates what your thoughts are about the police department. Do you wish to keep it and help make it better, or dismantle and use county and state? Jean, whenever you're ready, we'll start with you.
Well, obviously, I've been through the process when we didn't have a police chief, when they've left, and we've had the county help us. I don't think that's the answer, and I'm pretty sure the township's finding that isn't working for them either. So I do not want the county or state taking care of our local issues, and I do want to continue with our police department. And there's always room for improvement, so that's a good thing.
Okay, and if we can put the question up just to make sure that we're all reminded what it was. And Bill, you'll be next.
I would say that in my opinion, there's a spot in between those two drastic measures. I don't think anybody wants to see the police department dismantled, but I think it can certainly be improved. You look at the budget again, which I'll say again is 25% of the city budget. That's a lot of money and a lot of resources, and I question how well they're being utilized. I think we need to relook at the police department and its role. It seems like when you look at most of the calls, it's more of a social service than it is law enforcement. So maybe we need to have something more along those lines and less actual law enforcement folks and more people doing crisis intervention, because that seems to be the bulk of the calls.
Okay, moving on to Megan, whenever you're ready.
Well, I don't want to dismantle the police department. Certainly, I think in small towns, when you're looking at, or neighborhoods, even in big cities, the most effective policing is done when the police have a relationship with that community. And I don't think that that's possible if, they're not there. It's not the same people working and living, within or close to that community. So I would not be in favor of dismantling it, certainly. Of course, I think in any organization, anywhere, there's always going to be room for improvement, and that's for both the citizens and the police themselves. So I would look at having a good relationship with the police that we have and continuing to make sure that everyone has a good relationship with them and that they do with the city as well.
Okay, and Jerome, whenever you're ready.
I could probably talk for an hour on this. I'm still a member of the police department here, just because Paul asked me to come back and be a school liaison officer. I was already subbing in the school, so to transition to also being one of the school resource officers was an easy mix for me. As far as dismantling it, I think if you go to any town that's done away with their police department and contracted with the county for coverage, you're going to find almost complete and utter dissatisfaction, because nothing against the county. They have a high call load, and they're usually short-staffed like most police departments these days, and most law enforcement. We're being asked to do more and more and more state guidelines, federal guidelines, training comes out your ears. Bill talks about the police budget. I think a lot of that can be pushed back on the requirements. I mean, there's a lot of training that we're required to do yearly, and you get no help for that. You get no state budget, you get no federal money for it, so it has to come out of our budget, and unfortunately that runs it up. I think what's unique here, and one of the reasons I stayed here, is because being a small town community or a small town police department, you can make those personal connections. I mean, you will find after the officers have been here for a while and make those personal contacts,
Thank you, Jerome.
people will start to trust them.
Thank you. Got a time schedule we got to keep, so all right. Moving on to Teresa, whenever you're ready.
I definitely would choose to keep the police department as it is. I think we'd do ourselves a disservice if we went to county and depended on the county and state departments to take care of any of our needs. I agree with what some of the others said, that there's always room for improvement with anything, any organization you have. And so to continually look at, improving that in whatever way that may be, for sure, but definitely we need to keep it.
Voted in. Amy Jasper Flanders says, what is your opinion about moving the library and the city hall from downtown to the former Shopco building? Teresa, whenever you're ready, we'll start with you.
For larger space for both of them, it's kind of a logical place to go just because the building's already there sitting empty, and it would be one way to make use of that. It would be kind of sad to move it away from the residential area or the downtown, but it might just be that much easier for those that are running to go get groceries, and there you go, you can stop on your way or whatever. So not necessarily saying that it's good or bad, but it would definitely be an option, and you should look into it.
All right. Moving on to Jerome, whenever you're ready.
I guess my first question would be, is it going to be cost effective for us to do that? Because we were just talking about how to keep the downtown alive. If we're going to move our city services from the downtown and put them out in an abandoned building, well, not abandoned, but an empty building on the outside of town on the west edge, you've just emptied out another building for downtown. So I think it's kind of counterproductive. Granted, I think they both need more space. It's kind of a toss-up. I can see going out there for the space issue. At the same time, I'd be concerned about, well, now we have two more empty places downtown. So are we really going to benefit from doing it? Or is it just something where maybe our needs have grown to the point where we need that space and that's our most economical option?
Okay. And Megan, whenever you're ready.
I was actually on the committee that was investigating what was best for the library. And in the beginning of it, before we started, I never in a million years would have thought that I would agree to or vote to move it from downtown. But by the end of it, I was really in favor of the expansion into Shopco for a lot of reasons. One of which that I don't think a ton of people are aware of is that the secondary school, there would be a really good chance of a partnership there, as their library, as far as books and things like that, is actually shrinking because they have more tech. So that would be a great bonus. However, I do think it's something that might need to be put on hold for the time being, again, until we realize what we're working with budget-wise. But overall, I'm in favor, yes.
All right, and we'll move on to Bill.
Well, I would be opposed to both of those ideas. I would be opposed to any movement of publicly funded buildings from downtown. That being said, I find it interesting that we have outgrown our city building, and yet, it seems to be doing just fine. They seem to still be getting the work done there. And I think it's interesting that we've outgrown the library, but yet I drive past that building 4 or 5 times a day and it seems just fine. I've never seen lines outside waiting to get in. So I think there's always a want to do something different or get something bigger. I question the need on both those subjects.
Okay, and Jean, whenever you're ready.
I think there's a lot of pros and cons to it. I too don't want to see the buildings empty downtown, and doesn't mean we wouldn't find another use for them or sell them or whatever. But I think it has to be worked through, thought through. There's also other needs that maybe are more critical or more crucial right now than moving the library.
All right. Let's see if you have another one coming in. Dina Olson said, "What would you bring for the teens in our community to do? There really isn't anything for teens to do in this town to do." Jean, we'll start with you whenever you're ready.
That's been in discussion for as long as I can remember. Different things have been tried. I would love to see the movie theater back. I mean, people drive to Cold Spring, drive to Spicer to see a movie, and I think we could support one very easily. So that would be one thing I'd like to see happen. But you have to have people that want to put money into it and support it and be a developer. I mean, the city's not going to pay for it. It's just not going to come from tax dollars.
All right. Moving on to Bill, whenever you're ready.
I would echo exactly what Jean just said. I think that certainly we'd love to have multiple things in this town for the youth, the young adults to do. Am I willing to support spending my neighbor's tax dollars to do that? Absolutely not. I stand firm on that. The public money is public money. And I would say entertainment for teens, although it sounds like about as wonderful a thing as saving puppies. I'm sorry, but that's not what I'm going to take my neighbor's tax dollars to do.
All right, moving on to Megan.
Well, teenagers have strong opinions. I have one myself, so I know. And I think if ask what they would like to see, and just we have a really great forward-thinking school board right now, and I think they would be great people to get in touch with and to see what we're working with. And again, I don't think it's necessarily anything that the city needs to pour money into. I think we just need to look at what opportunities are already there that aren't being advertised or marketed enough, and also look into what might be something to do in the future and seek alternative funding for that besides our taxes.
Okay, and Jerome, whenever you're ready.
Being in the school, I get a lot of observation time watching kids, and a lot of them are kind of self-oriented. Electronic media is in their hand. They have 24/7 access to the entire world. So what do you bring to a teenager that they don't already have access to? I mean, a lot of times I think for us, we almost have to think more about restricting their access. Again, I'll have to give kudos to the school board, community education. That field house is going to be huge for us. We can bring so many more events in for all ages, as well as just bringing it open for kids. We've talked about basketball courts on the Parks Board. Well, you know what? I think there'll be a way for a basketball court to be open year round once that field house is built. As far as the city putting money into anything, I think just a good, strong support of the school, the community ed office, and the people that are already working in that area. I think for us to advertise and push that out, let people know, hey, we have this.
All right, and moving on to Teresa, whenever you're ready.
I definitely think there needs to be something. It was really sad when the movie theater closed down. That was one of those places my kids would love to walk to and visit. Even when they were young, the talk of having a city pool or water park had been going around, and I know there was funds that were raised or donated for that. I don't know what ever happened there, but even that might be an option to revisit again, where it's an activity and it's not a sitting and doing, watching. And they have so much of that already. It'd be something they could get out and do. But that's definitely, I think we need something for them for some activities to draw those families in.
We'll be ending with closing statements. So you each will get 1 minute to develop the closing statement. And Teresa, we'll start with you, and whenever you're ready.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today and to share my opinions and thoughts with you. And get out there and vote. If nothing else, we need everyone to vote. So thank you very much. Have a great evening.
All right, Jerome, your closing statements.
I'd like to say thank you to all the other candidates for city council. If I am lucky enough to be chosen to be on the council, I think I won't have a problem working with any one of you. I like what I've heard from everybody, and it's up to the people, whatever they want to do. If you see me on the street or see me in the school, say hi. Promise I won't growl at you.
Okay, and Megan?
Yeah, just the same as everybody else has said. Thank you to everybody, and I feel really confident that no matter what direction the election takes, that the city's going to be in good hands. And I think we have a lot of excitement and momentum in the town right now, and I can't wait to see what happens. So thank you.
And Bill, whenever you're ready.
I would say thanks for the opportunity to participate. I think how blessed we are that we have 5 people who have fresh, good ideas vying for 2 spots. And I think it comes down to finding a candidate that you can agree with and that whose views align with your own. And I think the people of Painesville will make their choice and we will move on. And I think no matter what the outcome, we will all be in good hands.
All right, and Jean, your closing statements.
I reiterate that. I agree. Thank you to everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. And yeah, I agree. Whoever gets the positions will have a great council to work on.
All right, well, we thank you all, the city council candidates, for joining us tonight. Actually, in the first ever virtual forum in the Painzill community. So we're going to mark that off the list. That'll be kind of cool thing to do. But thanks again for all you joining us. We're going to be moving on to our mayoral candidate forum right after this. And we're getting those members signed in here and ready to go. And then if your viewers at home, again, if there's any questions you would like the mayor's candidates to answer, we can put those in the comment section, either on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll be checking both. And we'll use the same format like we did with the city council candidates. We'll be answering 6 prepared questions and then moving on to the viewers at home with their questions as well. All right, so now we're going to be moving on to our mayoral candidates. To the right of me is Alicia LeBeau. After her is Sean Rinke. Next to him is Kenneth Olson III. Thank you all for joining us today. If you're familiar with the rules for this evening, you each have 1 minute to answer the 6 prepared questions. Then we'll be moving on to our viewers for their questions as well. Alicia, we'll start with you, and here's the first question for this evening. As new mayor, what would be your top 3 priorities in your first 100 days?
Well, thank you, Jacob. Top 3 priorities for me, I think, would be, first of all, we will have a new city administrator coming on board. So I think making sure that our new city administrator is coming up to speed and is merging well into our city staff and into our city as a whole. That would be one. Let's see, the other 2, that's a tough one. I think also, one of the things would be making sure that I would love to get some new faces on our city boards. So those come up for new members in January every year. The mayor appoints new members and the council votes on those. So I would love to recruit some new people into those committees. And then the last thing that I would do is I really feel like we need to get moving on a new comprehensive plan for our city. And that is our, vision for where we're headed. And that's something that is highly outdated and we need to get moving on.
All right, and Sean, whenever you're ready, what would be your top 3 priorities in your first 100 days?
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate the question, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's logging in for this virtual forum. I appreciate it. Looking at YouTube, it looks like there are about 62 joining us, which I'll be honest is more than I anticipated. So great seeing everyone. My three, it's hard to say in those first 100 days. There's only so much you can get done. Looking beyond those first 100 days, my top priorities would be housing and childcare. But looking in that first few months, I agree with Alicia 100%. We need to work with the city administrator. We have a wonderful candidate who we extended an offer to. Work with him to get things up and running, get things flowing, get the momentum of city government moving, continuing to move in the right direction. I would also look at various opportunities to partner with the school on collaboration, opening up the city government for greater access by individuals. The question earlier was, how do we involve citizens? I agree with Alicia that the committees, along with giving some public time to speak at council meetings, is very important. Thank you.
All right, and moving on to Kenneth. Your minute starts whenever you're ready.
Yeah, the first 100 days, that's always a tough time frame to look at, but probably, I'll echo what Alicia and Sean said in regards to the city administrator. After that, would definitely be begin trying to look at the budget, see where that lays, and see what changes, if any, would have to be made. And after that, would be looking at more of the individual goals, which, can be anything from schools to family recreation to infrastructure throughout the community. Probably out of those three, I'd have to say schools and infrastructure would definitely be a tie for that third spot in there.
All right, moving on to our second question. Kenneth, you'll be answering this first. What do you consider to be Painesville's strengths, and how would you best capitalize on them?
We're definitely in a good spot, relatively equidistance from Wilmer, Sauk, St. Cloud, Litchfield. But at the same time, we've got a lot of great natural resources around us, Lake Coronas, Mud Lake, the nature trails, bike trails, whatever what you want to call them. We definitely should build an advertisement upon that. I'm not saying go and spend a bunch of money to advertise that, but definitely push out, hey, we've got lake that we can go fishing on, can go swimming on, that we can go and do things on. We've got trails that connect us to these other communities that go right through the heart of, if I recall correctly, it'd be the Sioux Uprising of 1862 and some of those national markers as well.
All right. And Sean, whenever you're ready.
Painesville has, by my last count, about 2,500 strengths, and those are the citizens of our town. And we need to capitalize by getting our citizens involved in the government process. We need to bring more people, more voices into our government, be them on committees, be them at city council meetings, and we need to get those voices and our people active. As we were touring with city administrator candidates, Mayor Thompson pointed out that in Painesville, when we come up with a good idea, our community rallies behind you and we make it happen. That's how we built the new baseball field. That's how we built so many things in this town. The field project at the school now. We need to focus on our people. We need to build up the citizenry of our town. We need to make sure that they have voices. And when we capitalize on our people, we can go anywhere.
All right, and Alicia, whenever you're ready.
I think that a couple of our greatest strengths are, number one, our location, as Kenneth said, being between St. Cloud and Wilmer. And I think with the upcoming 4-lane highway expansion project, that is really poising us as a city for some potential great growth. I think right now we already have quite a few job openings here in our community with the industrial park, and a lot of our businesses here in town are looking for employees. And I think those two things together, obviously within that, we need to address our housing issue that we have. And I know that there are things in the works. There's the new apartment building going up. There will be another senior housing unit being built in the springtime. And both of those things will become available. And so I think that is part of capitalizing on some of our strengths already. And we just need to continue that.
All right, moving on to our third question. Alicia, you'll answer this first. What are the biggest challenges facing the city of Painesville, and how would you lead through them?
Wow. I think that for me personally, some of the biggest challenges that we have are, and I wrote this in the article in the paper, in the last 3.5 years, my time on council, there have been 4 homicides in our community. And for a town of 2,500 people, that's a pretty scary statistic. And I think that we as a community need to come together, and as some of the council candidates mentioned, looking at social services and making crisis intervention available to people, and how can we support our police department in the work that they're doing, and look at preventing those types of catastrophes happening in our community in the future.
All right, moving on to Sean, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I think we have sort of 3 that are overarching right now. One is the city's budget. We also have a housing shortage and a childcare shortage. When we look at the budget, I addressed this a little bit in my responses in the newspaper, so I'll just go over it quickly. But I think there are means within the current budget reserves to pay off some of the city's bonds and the city's debts, but we're not paying high interest on those and getting a low interest on the investment. We can pay off those debts to help balance our budget. Housing and childcare are more difficult to address. Housing is very expensive, but I think we can look at expanding some TIF options for more access to apartments and affordable housing. Childcare, I think we need to support family-based childcare providers, making sure that there's greater access to outside of the 7 to 5 childcare hours, maybe some overnights or late night, evening, mornings. Once we get housing and childcare addressed, we can bring in more employees to our city, better support that industrial park, and help all of our residents.
All right, and Kenneth, we move on to you.
Some of the biggest challenges I think that we're facing as a community, for sure, is with the housing and getting people into town. As it's been mentioned numerous times, we do have companies here in town. They're looking for employees, but bringing employees in is only part of the equation. Employees bring families, kids. Well, you need a spot to house them. You need spots to take care of the kids. As far as the budget goes, that's something that would have to dig in and look at an itemized list. What do we have? Look and go, okay, what do we have to pay? What should we, and what can we hold off on into time being?
All right, moving on to our 4th question. Kenneth, you'll answer this one first. What would you do as mayor to address the downtown area?
Well, we definitely need to look into the downtown area, not so much as a retail center nowadays, but look at it as a service center. That's what we predominantly have down there as it is. I know that at least one realty and a couple insurance agencies down there, for example. But we also need to look at the safety of the area, including the streets, the sidewalks, and try to find and work with anyone who's willing to move into any of the empty buildings down there and support a small business startup down there if that's what someone chooses to do. It's not the same downtown I grew up with, but at the same time, we got to go towards the future with it as well.
All right, moving on to Sean, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I echo a lot of what Kenneth just said regarding downtown is not retail anymore. Retail is not retail the way it was 15, 20 years ago. But we can prioritize and we can capitalize on downtown being service oriented. We can also, one of the things we did a few years ago was we had a downtown redevelopment commission. We can revitalize that and we can listen to what those folks have to say. They can talk to our local business owners. We can hear from those who own businesses downtown and what the government can do for them. I share some of the council candidates' concerns with using taxpayer money to build businesses or rehab some of the buildings. But there are things that we can do, such as expanding access to EDAP loans for downtown businesses and other options. But the biggest thing we can do is listen to those who live and work down there and help provide them the support that they need through a commitment to revitalizing downtown into the service-oriented place it is.
Okay, moving on to Alicia, whenever you're ready.
I think that as city leadership, one of the biggest things that we can do for our downtown is help change people's perspective and the way that we as a community talk about our downtown. I've heard so many times the phrase "our dying downtown," but the reality of it is we have over 3 businesses, I believe was the last count, operating in our downtown district. And when we were on the library board looking at where we could possibly move the library to within downtown, there was only 3 empty buildings. So that to me says that we have a lot going on in our downtown, and we just need to look at more how we as a community communicate about that and what our expectations are. As the others have said, it's no longer a service oriented it's a service oriented downtown rather than a retail downtown, and change is good and we need to go with it.
All right, and just remind our viewers again, if you have any questions for the candidates, to put them in the comment section. We have 2 more prepared questions, and then we'll be moving on to your questions after that. So Alicia, you'll answer this question. The city has roughly a $2 million annual budget. What % do you think you can cut from it?
This is kind of a difficult question. I am currently on the city's budget and finance board, and it's taken me almost 4 years on the council to really get a good grasp. And there's still probably a lot I don't know, but we have a very tight budget, and our department heads do an awful lot with the amount of money that. One of the things that we as a city have neglected, I think, is to plan ahead for future expansion projects that are going to be needed. And so that's something that moving forward, we need to be able to be better at that. But I think also it's important for people in this community to understand that when the council passes a raise in the tax levy, that does not equate to each individual person in the town is going to have their property tax raised by that %. That is a percentage that is spread out across our whole town, all of the businesses and residences. And I think that maybe that is something that a lot of people don't understand. And I know I didn't understand that either until just very recently.
All right, moving on to Sean.
I think asking what kind of a percentage could be cut from a $2 million budget is a real oversimplification of the issue. As Alicia said, we have department heads and city officials who do their best to work off of as little money and resources as possible. So I think what we need to do, though, is look at this year's budget and look at what funds are we setting aside for capital improvement projects and which of those funds can be deferred for 1 or 2 years. And then in the next budget cycle, as I talked about earlier, we can address some of those outstanding bonds and those debts. And if we can address those outstanding bonds and debts, we can free up about $100,000, which would take a significant cut off of the amount of the levy. And then we can address how much we are taxing and increasing our levy. So instead of going up by between 0 and 2%, which doesn't meet inflation, we go up at a reasonable amount, so we're not looking at double-digit increases in the future.
Okay, and moving on to Kenneth, whenever you're ready.
$2 million nowadays you look at a lot of these other larger cities throughout the country, that's nothing. For a small town, that is still a decent chunk of change. To actually put a number on the percentage to be cut, that I cannot do at this moment. But probably the best way that I can figure to go about approaching this problem would be to look at the budget and prioritize. What things do we have to pay on right now? What things do we have to operate? After that, go on to what our shoulds are. What should we have? What should we pay off sooner rather than later? And at the tail end, look at, okay, what are the things that we can push off for a year, 2, 3, until we have the money to do it, or we can figure those in as time moves on.
Okay, moving on to our last prepared question. Kenneth, you'll answer this one first. What makes you the best candidate to be our mayor of our community?
I'd have to say, on top of a youth being probably the most youthful out of all the candidates, having a background working with groups from every background, race, religion across this country, with my previous position as a boss rep, I'm more than willing to work with anyone. Even if I don't see eye to them on every subject, I'm willing to talk, and we'll get to the bottom and try to come up with a solution that is best, not just for me or them, but best for the community as a whole.
All right. Moving on to Sean, whenever you're ready.
Simply put, I love the city of Paynesville. My wife and I moved for a number of years while we went to school. And when we decided to start our family, we came back to Paynesville because Paynesville is the community that we all love. It's not perfect, and I recognize that. And that's why I'm running for mayor, so that I can lead us into building a more perfect city, so that I can lead us into the next generation, so that my kids can grow up in the city that I grew up in, the city that I grew to love, so that all of our kids can do the same. Painesville is a phenomenal community with great people, and I think that as mayor, I can focus on those assets to build a community for generations to come.
All right, and we'll move on to Alicia whenever you're ready.
Well, I think I have been always, in my time on the council, available to people and very receptive to the people in this community and their concerns and things that they have brought to my attention and contacted me about. I'm also committed to the people in this town and helping Painesville continue to thrive. In my 4 years on the council, I've served on almost every one of our city boards, and I've got a good understanding of how our local government operates now. And I also have a track record of voting in favor of things that are going to be in the best interest of our community and in the best interest of the future of this community. And as Sean said too, I love this community. It's been a great place for us to raise our kids, and I look forward to helping Painesville continue to be a place that we are proud to call home.
All right, and then now we're going to be moving on to our viewers' questions. Start with one Shane Schmidt said earlier, with our budget needing to be cut close to 16%. As he's on the fire department, I see equipment and trucks that will need to be replaced within the next couple of years. What are the best solutions? And Alicia, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I want to say thanks, Shane, for submitting this question. As I mentioned earlier, we have not done the best job. The city has done what we've needed to do to get by on the small budget that our departments have. And our fire department in particular has had to put off a lot of their capital improvement projects because they don't have funds available. They have a depreciation schedule and a replacement schedule for their equipment. And a lot of that stuff has gone far beyond that schedule because we haven't had the funds available. So this is a really complicated question, and just the having to cut 16% is not even realistic at this point. But I think it's more about how do we look ahead and how do we do a better job of planning for the future going forward for these replacement equipment and capital improvement projects.
Okay, moving on to Sean, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. One of the nice things about our fire department budget is that it's a budget comprised of funds that come from multiple sources. So our fire department is not just funded based on city contributions. Our fire department is funded based on contributions from the township and other entities with whom we partner. So the nice thing about that is that we can increase contributions to the expenses like fire trucks and equipment without having to bear the full brunt of that cost as a city. But I think what we need to do is we need to sit down as the city council and make sure we're sitting with the police chief and other representatives of the fire department to go over that capital improvement plan and bring it up to date and make sure that the city and all of the other agencies are making a full commitment to that capital improvement plan to ensure that public safety is met.
You're ready.
As far as updating and looking at the solutions to updating and upgrading our equipment, first and foremost does come back to the budget to see where we can maybe take a little money from here or there and move it in towards that. As a city, we do need to squirrel away money for, when the equipment breaks down and ultimately when we have to upgrade and replace equipment. I know what I'm about to say is not probably the answer everyone would immediately look at, but at the same time, it's one that should be taken into consideration, and that is to look at some good, if it fits for the time being, some used equipment from another location that would fit our needs for time being under the budget constraints that we have.
All right. We got a question from our viewer, Amy Ostendorf, saying, what are your thoughts about our police department? Do you wish to keep it and make it better, or dismantle and use county and state? Kenneth, we'll start with you.
I'll make this clear first and foremost. I am against the dismantling of our police department and the contracting with county and state services to perform it. However, we do have we have a lot of room for improvement here. Part of it is in officer training. How can the officers approach a situation that maybe is not a direct law violation, but how can they approach the situation better? And maybe look at incorporating professionals out of other organizations such as mental health and whatnot as on an on-call type basis, where if we're looking at a suicidal individual, a cop goes out, but he can call a mental health professional right away and maybe get that person help before he can get them over to the hospital. As I said, as an example here.
Okay, and Sean, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I do think we need to continue working with our police department to make it more of a community policing focused department rather than one. The term doesn't fit, but it's the one that comes to mind, less of a militant police department. And I'm not meaning to say that we have that, but I think we need to take a more community focused, where our officers are going into the community, they're attending events, they're connecting with business owners and individuals. The SRO program at the school, of which Mr. Feigum is one of our officers there, has been really wonderful connecting with our youth. Another program that I'm proud of is we're looking at the acquisition of body cameras and looking at paying for those using funds out of our forfeiture money so that they're not costing taxpayer dollars. And that helps with police accountability and transparency to help establish a greater degree of trust within our department. I think we don't have an issue, but it's something that there's a perception of it recently, and we can help address that.
Okay, and Alicia, whenever you're ready.
I think thinking back a couple of years about the way that our community rallied around and supported both with financial and just momentum and morale around the K-9 unit was very clear evidence of how our community as a whole feels supportive of our police department and feels the necessity of our police department. So I wouldn't even consider expanding our police department because I don't think that that's in the best interest of our community, nor do I think that that would be highly supported by our community. But, you know, I think that there are changes that we can make for sure moving forward. I think, you know, like Sean mentioned, the body camera program, that's in the works. I think also assembling a crisis management team, I think I had mentioned that earlier, you know, mental health professionals who can be on call for when we have those types of situations going on that are maybe beyond the training and expertise of our law enforcement officers, having the backup and the support in place for them and for our community.
All right, move on to our next question from our viewer. What is your opinion about moving the library and the city hall from downtown to a former Shopko building? Alicia, we'll start with you.
I was actually on the board, the library board that looked at expansion of the library. And one of the things was that the Great River Regional Library System and representatives said that our community as a whole could service a library 2 to 3 times what ours currently is. And I think we also have an incredible need for more space with our city hall and our DMV. And so one of the main reasons I was in support of moving the library and the city hall out to the Shopko building had a lot to do with finances, because from a financial standpoint, it was much more cost effective for us to do a remodel out there rather than trying to build or expand where we currently are. And it also provided the opportunity for the city to utilize or even sell those current buildings in downtown and bring in new businesses potentially into our downtown.
All right, Sean, we'll go to you next.
I think moving the library out of downtown into the Shopko building would be one of the worst decisions the city council could make. I do not support that at all. I understand there might be some logic behind it from a budgetary standpoint, but I see libraries as something that serve the community, and they serve those who are often underserved. And my view of government is that government works best when it serves those who are underserved. And the library in its location downtown serves students at the elementary school. It serves a number of childcare providers who can walk to the library, serves a number of very low income folks who need to walk to the library and might use their Wi-Fi or their computers. And by taking it out of downtown and moving it to the Shopko building, we're taking that service away from individuals who might not drive, who might not have access to a car. We're taking it away from those of us who might have the least and putting it out where it might be a little bit more convenient. I think it would be better for the city and for downtown to spend some more money in developing a better library in the downtown area.
Okay, and Kenneth, whenever you're ready.
Right now, I'm not a huge fan of looking at moving City Hall and the library out to the old Shopko building. First and foremost, I don't like the idea of possibly vacating 2 buildings downtown to then have to try and turn around and sell, but until that, have to maintain. Now, is it something that down the road would be a more viable option? I believe it could be. But in the short term, as of right now, considering the budget constraints, considering the use and the effectiveness of where it is right now located, I don't think this would be the right time to make a move out towards the edge of town.
Okay, we'll move on to our next question. No more questions? Okay. We'll then go to closing statements. So you have 1 minute to do a quick closing statement. And Kenneth, we'll start with you.
I'd just like to thank everyone from the town to Matt Dickhausen and for doing all this and allowing so many of us to be able to participate and thank people for listening to us, our ideas. And if there's any ideas that come up, I do hope that whoever is elected mayor, do not hesitate to reach out and contact them. I hope that whichever the three of us it is more than willing to listen, take into consideration, but at the same time push out information to you guys as it becomes available.
Okay, and Sean, your closing statements?
Thank you. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who participated tonight, especially those who sent in questions. We live in a representative democracy, and the way that works is when those of us who are in government understand the needs and the wishes of those whom we serve. So thank you for participating in this. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to connect with you. Thank you for reaching out and speaking with us tonight. I also want to say a huge thanks to current Mayor Thompson, who's closing out on over 2 decades worth of service to our city. He's done a phenomenal job leading our city, and I think he needs to be credited with that. I'm asking for your vote because I think that I'm the right candidate for this position. I want to work with the city. I want to grow our community. So thank you again for allowing me this time. And however you vote on November 3rd or before then, and for whomever you vote, please vote. Thank you.
All right, and Alicia, your closing statements.
I want to start by just thanking the people of Painesville for the opportunity that I've had to serve on the council for the last 4 years. It has been educational and growing, and such a privilege for me to have that opportunity. And I want to thank also Sean and Kenneth. I and the 5 who are running for council members. I think it is fantastic that people in this community have options to choose from, and there are really strong options this year. And I love that about our community, that people are so willing to get involved and be a part of our political process. And I thank you again to the citizens of Painesville. And I echo what Sean said, no matter who you vote for, I would encourage you to just make sure that you get out and vote. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you 3 for coming in. Like I said earlier, this is the first virtual forum that we had, and we were able to pull it off. So thank you again for joining us this evening. We'd also like to thank the Painesville Community Education and the Painesville Chamber for sponsoring tonight's forum. And our producer informed me that today is National Chamber Day. So congratulations to all the chambers out there, including our own Painesville Chamber, for doing what they do. More information about the Painesville Area Chamber of Commerce can be found at painesvillechamber.org. And don't forget to support our local chamber members. Folks at home, don't forget to vote on or before November 3rd. You can visit the City of Painesville website for a sample ballot and for more information about voting. So from our producer, Matt Dickhausen, and myself, thanks for joining us, and have a great night.